Welcome to the official YouTube channel for the Colin Cowherd podcast. Go on, hit the subscribe button. There you go, right down there. You want to be among the first to hear my weekly takes, NFL, college football, more, right there. All right, Nick Wright stopping by today. We'll dance around for 55 minutes. And I have to start with this. How we all put a little bit of makeup on in the morning because the HD cameras are very bright in our business.
Yeah.
So 2 mornings ago, one of the kind of senior makeup people, it's getting out here out west, it's getting dry. I've been in the mountains, Park City, my skin's dry. And so she said, hey, listen, I know this skin place if you want to do a facial, and I'm not really a facial guy. So I said,
oh, you're lying.
I said, okay, I'll go do a facial. And it's right around this. So our Fox offices are by Beverly Hills, or like 5 minutes away.
Yeah.
So I went there today, and it was an hour and a half. It was great. I mean, again, people playing with your face and all sorts of apparatus, and and then I saw the bill.
It was more a facial in Beverly Hills for Colin Cowherd. I'm shocked you didn't get the Jiffy Lube price.
No.
And give me a break.
Let me tell you something. I know this is a very wealthy part of America, but when a facial, a very good facial, is about the price of a Mercedes-Benz payment.
I was gonna guess $600. That's where I was gonna set it at. I don't know how much.
I'm not gonna get into specifics, but that's a fine guess.
So how about this? So I've never had a facial. I've gone with my daughter a few times, like the manicure pedicure place. But this is not really my style, right? Not saying it's your style. It's not something I've done.
Same thing.
My wife, on the other hand, she won't get mad at me because she loves you so much. She has a membership at a place called the Face Gym, which is like a gym for your face. It's exactly what it sounds like. Now, she, I won't reveal her age, but we have 3 children, 2 of which are adults, and she looks better than she did when I met her. I know everybody says this about their wives. I happen to not be lying when I say it. She's drop dead gorgeous. And a lot of it's natural, but a lot of it also is she really takes time and takes care of herself. But she has it's like, hey, what are you doing today? She's like, oh, it's my, monthly face gym appointment. And these are things that exist in the world that I would have never known, that I would have never known about.
And let me tell you, they don't come cheap. Beauty is not cheap.
That's the thing. Evidently, are you going to bill Fox? See, that's the type of thing that I think you just need one of the makeup people to say, oh, you have to do this. Like, this is, if you enjoyed it, as long as it's something you want to do, just be like, this is just part of, this is like having, I don't pay for my own microphone. Like, hey, this is part of what it takes to put me on television every day.
This is a moneymaker. Give me a break.
Right. I mean, you can't be America's most trusted source and be looking, like you have echinacea. Like, come on, you gotta have it together. Rosacea is what I meant. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, they're all kind of in the same family. All right, Nick, the biggest story of the day, Mark Cuban, who recently announced he's leaving Shark Tank. A week later announces he's selling a majority stake of the Dallas Mavericks to a casino tycoon for about $3.5 billion. It's a unique setup, according to Shams. Cuban keeps shares in the team, full control of basketball operations. So my first take is recent polling indicates Biden is not a viable candidate.
Oh, my goodness.
And Mark Cuban is, to me, a centrist, a left-leaning centrist, and has an interest in it. There's no reason in 1 week to make these moves. My guess is it signals a political upheaval in the Democratic Party, and Cuban could become a leading candidate with the vice president being selected by the Democratic Party.
Oh, well, that is not what I thought you were going to say. That is, You sure you're not just watching too much Billions? That last season of Billions by my buddy Brian Koppelman kind of had this, except the guy was running third party candidate. All right, so I would say the fly in that ointment is, then why is he keeping basketball control? In case he doesn't he doesn't win, that way he can still have basketball.
Yep.
I mean, I did not think that's what you were going to say.
Remember, there's an altruistic bent to his personality. He created an online pharmacy that I think is one of the great inventions up there with
totally
TV,
agree
FaceTime.
with you on that.
Yeah, one of the great of our time. Who benefits? Older Americans. Who votes? Older Americans. It's a very, very powerful mechanism for relatability with older American voters who often can trend conservative. If you're saving $800-900 a month on a pharmacy buy based on Mark Cuban, that's powerful.
Well, that's I think it's called cost plus drugs. Yes. I agree with you on that is one of the coolest and smartest innovations of the last decade. And it isn't pure altruism, because they tell you, we're going to charge you what it costs us plus 10% to make it a viable business. And it also gives you an idea of how much price gouging people deal with for medications and all those things. So I think that's great. I like Cuban. I didn't,
so do I.
I don't know that the thing on, the Biden part of it is poll numbers are terrible. That's undeniable. I understand that. I also think from an accomplishment standpoint, he has been far more effective than people give him credit for. Now, people can say it's been effective in a bad direction, because you don't like the things he went out to accomplish. But for the things that he said he was going to accomplish, I think he's checked a lot of those boxes. The problem for him, and I think the biggest thing that's hurting his poll numbers, is his vice president is unpopular for reasons we don't have to get into, but she is, and people are worried about his age. Now, the guy running against him, in my humble opinion, is one of the most dangerous, unhinged people in modern American life, and is damn near as old. So between the two, to me, it's a pretty obvious choice. I do understand where people would like a different, alternative option. I just assumed that if there were going to be an alternative option, I assumed it would be Gavin Newsom. I figured that's why he's doing this debate with DeSantis. But maybe he's trying to wait. The Cuban if you call this correct, that is an all-timer. That is not where my head went. I thought, I'll be totally honest, my initial head went to is there a scandal that's coming? Is he... Yeah, and I'm not wishing that upon him, but I'm just being totally honest. Okay, you're getting away from Shark Tank. You're selling your share of the Mavs. Is something coming out that could put you in a very weakened position?
Yeah, that's probably, if I had to guess, a second take, that would be it.
And if you have a deal with the new owner, part of the sale, I get to control the team. That's kind of hard to unwind almost no matter what. I wouldn't have sold you the team otherwise. What I will say is this, because people don't, I'm sure a fair amount of your viewers and listeners don't love my politics. That's fine. I think Cuban would be an excellent leader. I think Cuban, I think he is, I think there are a lot of rich people, uber rich people, that I am not sure how sharp they are. I think you probably were very smart about a very specific thing. And to your credit, right timing, right whatever, turn it into a ton of money. And far too many people treat those folks as brilliant visionaries when it might have just been that's pretty, good timing. And I'm really smart at this certain thing. Cuban, I've read enough things that he's said. I've seen him. He's been in my life for 20-some in my life. You know what I mean? In our lives for 20-some years. I'm pretty confident saying that's a sharp guy. to sharp guy. And also what I will say about whatever, because the overwhelming odds are the next president is either going to be, Joseph Robinette Biden or Donald Trump. Whomever comes after either one of those guys, because neither one of them can run again. Now, assuredly, if Trump wins, he will attempt to not ever have to run again, just be president for life. There's a word for that. I don't know what it is. Whoever comes after one of those guys, I really hope they are more of the moment, because I do think we are facing some real challenges from a technological standpoint of the
AI.
world changing. And I'm not trying to do like AI panic, but that's certainly a part of it. AI, and just as the world evolves, that it certainly feels like I don't need them to be AOC's age or my age. I think me and AOC are about the same age. She's probably a little younger. But someone that you, Colin Cowherd, wouldn't feel like you had to call sir or ma'am or Mr. or Mrs. because they are so much older than you, I would like. Right. And so Cuban fits that bill. Newsom fits that bill for the folks on the right side of the aisle. DeSantis fits that bill. I would like the younger, and by younger, again, I just mean people my parents' age, a little younger than my parents, to have more of because it's not just president. It's, up until recently, the Speaker of the House, the leader of the Senate. These are all, much, much older folks that I'm not saying they're not sharp enough to understand what's happening. What I'm saying is there's a level of understanding things that you use or grew up with or something that is always going to be hard, in the same way that I'm not good at TikTok and I'm really good at Twitter. Because I came up using Twitter and TikTok was, is the last 5 years. Yeah. And I'm like, my teenage daughters gets it more than me. So, yeah. But if Cuban runs for president, that'd be a hell of a call by you. B, you could probably convince him to create a cabinet of sports and make you the secretary of it. Like you and Bill Simmons could arm wrestle over it. That'd be something else, man. That would be something else.
So, last week we didn't talk a ton of sports, and I do have a non-sports topic I'll get to, but there is a sports thing where, I've said before, we're all morally flexible. Okay, we're all morally flexible. We all speed. I drove about 80 getting to my house today, though I don't have a speeding ticket. If I'd gone through a school district, I wouldn't, but it was all just freeways and stuff.
Yep.
And it is interesting, the position that and you're not a big college football fan, but it's beyond that I know Jim Harbaugh's program did something that appears to be deceptive, but it doesn't bother me. And the reason it doesn't bother me is because, and it's probably 2 or 3 different reasons. One, it's like taxes. If I write off a bottle of wine, I'm not the first, and I'm kind of a sucker if I don't, right? Like sure. At some point you're like, And the other thing about it is, I feel deep down, because this has been sourced multiple times, there's been so much cheating going on, and I don't think Harbaugh and Michigan's history indicates they ever bought players or skirted the system. But I sort of feel like a lot of people that are pissed off are Southern college football fans who now acknowledge, Michigan and everybody can buy players too. And now the NIL and transfer portal, it's even the playing field out. And I think that, combined with Harbaugh's unique personality, I'm rooting for Jim to not be punished too severely.
Well, I agree with almost all of that. And so a few things. One is, it's also bad for college football if he's punished super severely, because it makes it more likely he leaves college football. And Jim Harbaugh is good for college football. Nobody benefits from Jim Harbaugh going to coach the Bears other than potentially the Bears. And so he's good for college football. I also don't think there's a lot of people actually outraged by this. I think there are people that either had an axe to grind or have their own purposes served by Michigan being dinged that are acting like they are deeply morally outraged. I'm not acting like there aren't moral outrages in sports. There are sometimes, and almost always, to me, involves off-field violence, particularly off-field violence towards people that can't really defend themselves. And I've never been one I'm not that outraged by when pre-NIL guys paid for players. I wasn't that outraged. I'm not that outraged by a pro athlete getting in a bar fight. There are different things though, and everybody knows what they are, where you're like, no, that's beyond the pale, and it makes me feel kind of scummy rooting for this guy or this team. But this was not a hard one for me. It did not seem like, now there are, and so we all have different lines. If the scandal was, and maybe people will say, Nick, you're just drawing totally arbitrary lines. So be it. If this was the allegation, at Michigan Stadium, at the Big House, they would systematically cut off the ability for the opposing team to communicate coach to quarterback in key moments, I would think that is a massive violation. That is, to me, and again, I don't know why that is in one category.
I do.
Go ahead.
Well, because in 1994, when they set the rule, there were camcorders. It would have been very difficult to get those tickets. It would have taken you a week. And camcorders set up in a room, in an office. People, this is SeatGeek iPhone.
Yep, exactly right.
It just isn't the same.
And it also didn't, it felt like whenever there is a system that is built around the assumption there is some level of cheating, that cheating existing doesn't bother me that much. And by that, I mean, the reason college football has 4 guys' faces on a placard as a sign, and then they change it up, or all these things, is because there is the assumption, as some of our signs might be stolen at some point. Nobody thinks that's not happening ever. So this one didn't, I agree with you on this. This one didn't rise to the level of felony. Now, with that said, what did, I don't want to say bother me, but at least I found a little irritating, was Michigan acting like they are this persecuted, totally innocent babe in the woods. And Michigan, I understand in sports, but the Michigan versus everybody and this idea that they have been wronged. I don't think Michigan has been wronged. I don't think they're the victim, but I also don't think they victimized anyone on any substantial level. And I think they're the best college football team in the country. You're right. I don't watch nearly as much as you do, but I watch the biggest games, and I'm very familiar with the teams that are in the argument for the best college football team in the country. And I know Georgia fans are going to be like, we haven't lost in 3 years. Maybe it should be us. I get that. I think Michigan has just can beat you in almost every way. I don't think they're going to beat you 49-45. I understand that, but their defense is too good, in my opinion, to let a game get to 49-45. And so I'm really impressed by them. I'm really impressed by them. And I'll be surprised if Iowa scores 7 points. I know that game's on Fox. Everyone should watch it, but I'll be surprised if Iowa scores 7 points.
2 things. Our judicial system has layers of crimes, like levels of crimes.
Of course.
And this is like speeding. Yes, Jim went too fast and probably flipped the bird in a Maserati going 92. At 80 in an Acura, it wouldn't have been outrageous, but it was kind of in your face, over the top, if it's true, right? It was a little, but it's still speeding. It's not burglary.
Correct. This is at worst, to use the judicial analogy, the most severe misdemeanor. It does not qualify as like the least severe felony. This is at most like walking out of the supermarket and with something in your, doing the self-checkout and being like, oh, I forgot the stuff at the bottom of my cart. I'm sorry. Like, they might even give you a court date for it, but it's not for you. Probably don't need to hire an attorney. Like, that's to me the level that it was at. And also that's why since your show does your pod and your show does a substantial amount of college football, you guys talked about it. We, on my pod and on my TV show, we haven't talked about it once. Like, like it's just not our, like, I don't think, but if it was a true scandal, we don't talk a ton of baseball, when the Astros thing was going on, we at least talked about that and what it meant. Right. And again, that felt different. Maybe this is me sounding like an old man, but it felt different because the allegation of using like high-level technology,
of course,
felt like it was different than, you know what I mean? My guy at second base can see the sign the catcher's giving, and we've got a little system built in. It just felt different.
Yep. And by the way, let's pivot to something else you talked about, but it was part of this, the overstated anger often apparent on social media that doesn't exist. And so I've had this feeling forever that, for instance, very few people hate Joe Biden. He's sleepy. He would be picking on an old guy, but his poll numbers are plummeting. And I think it's inflation. I think it's very simply that I used to go to the grocery store and it would be about $55 to get the 12 to 15 items I go get once a week. It's now $73. I notice, well, what if you're working class, couple of kids, long commute to work, gas prices up? That's the polling numbers. It's not that suddenly everybody hates Biden or everybody now has forgotten Trump and his past. It's simply the economy. But if you go to social media, it's nobody likes Joe Biden. It's not that. It's overstated anger. And the truth is, if you go look at the history of our politics, for instance, the midterms, liberals did pretty well. Recent elections, liberals did well. I don't believe now suddenly it's going to be an avalanche to the right. What I believe is happening is our government's trying to get it under control. These are why the interest rates are so high. Inflation is worse than we're talking about. You and I are a bit in a bubble. But when I go to the grocery store or McDonald's, I drove by a McDonald's the other day and I was with my stepson. And he goes, have you gone there lately? And I said, I usually go in the summer. I'll go get some French fries when I want a salt high. And he said, it used to be 13. And now you got to break a second bill. Now it's 21. So you go from giving a 20 and getting 7 back to you have to give them a second bill. It pisses people off. And so overstated anger. Now we can go back to sports. But I tend to think this is something I tell people all the time when you're creating a show or when you're acknowledging a problem. Don't fall for anger that doesn't exist in your neighborhood. Very few things. The last thing that pissed people off that I remember was that submarine. The dad got his son on it and it blew up.
Yeah.
That pissed a lot of parents off. That made me visceral reaction. I was mad at that dad. But by and large, Nick, I am probably outraged twice a year. That is it.
Well, so this is an interesting thing, and maybe this is a conversation in and of itself. And by the way, remind me at some point, there's a LeBron thing I want to talk to you about, not surprisingly, but just remind me at some point.
All right.
I am starting to, because for a long time I was of the belief that too much of our colleagues and too much of media in general is reacting to the loudest voices on social media, and that is not really what matters, and that the average person doesn't even know about it or care about all those things. That's kind of how I felt. And I felt a lot of people were treating Twitter like real life in ways they shouldn't, all those things. Here is my concern. I think we are approaching that it almost has become a self-fulfilling prophecy in that you're right, people are not often that outraged. But if we are fed so much outrage and then we believe everyone is outraged, it then leads to that being real. And in a weird way, and this is, again, I apologize, I'm building quite the bridge here. But there was the story yesterday that Sports Illustrated, what's left of Sports Illustrated, that some of their articles are being written by AI, fake people, AI headshots, AI stories, the whole nine. And it's pretty outrageous. And it's a really sad final stop for a once proud brand. And I just started thinking, I was like, God damn, man. Like, we are approaching somewhat rapidly, like there not being any authoritative voices or publications that actually can set, listen, here are the things that matter. Here's the bullshit. And if we lose those entirely, then what is the difference between what people are actually mad about and what social media or Twitter says everybody's mad about that then sets the conversation? Like I'm not explaining this perfectly, but I do wonder, there's right now, there's a very dark corner of social media that is furious with Malika Andrews for no reason whatsoever, in my opinion. I think it's so wildly unfair, but it is so amplified and so in your face if you even step your toe into like NBA Twitter. Does that actually now mean that's the reality? Like, if there is like, for her, it's the reality. Like, it's what she's dealing with. I'm now mentioning it. It's like, even if it was all bullshit, if there's enough amplification of the bullshit, does that make the bullshit the real thing? And that legitimately concerns me.
Yeah, I'm more concerned by bad executives, and I don't think Fox has a very big number of these that are reactionary and think it's the truth. So I think Malika Andrews is on a short list of 6 or 7 people, the single most talented person at ESPN. I think she's on a very short list.
She's a star.
If I literally was hiring a host, forget anything, a singular host in the country, she'd probably be 1 or 2.
This is going to sound, and I'll let you finish, as arrogant as it is. She's one of the only people in the country, younger than me, that I'm like, God, dog, it might be more talented. It hurts my heart. Like, I don't want to say it. Like, I have no jealousy or bitterness towards anyone in the business older than me, because I'm like, by the time I'm their age, I'll be better. But anyone younger than me, I'm like keeping track of them. This is where bosses really matter, deeply, truly matter. And where really I had a bunch of people respond to the discussion we did last week about local radio and media. I think media people, especially younger media people, appreciated some of the conversations we have. So if those people are listening, this is one thing that I will tell you. If you are in the creative space and the no walking without a net space, which anyone doing live radio or television or anything live is, it really matters who your bosses are. Because you are going to step in it. We all step in it to varying degrees on varying things. And there's certain things that no matter how good your boss is, if you say something truly objectionable, nobody's going to be able to save you. But there's going to be times where people get really, really mad at you. And whether or not that scares them, whether or not they know this is a temporary moment and we will move past it, and whether or not they back you is as important as anything ever. As important as anything ever.
Yeah, you are one of the true opinionists in the country beyond me. A lot of people are hosts who host shows, but they're not really opinionists. They don't want to be called out. I consider myself not in importance, but I consider myself Joe Rogan, Stern, Bill Maher, Hannity, Maddow. I'm an opinionist.
Of course.
That can break a story. I'm not a host. You're not a host. We're opinionists. And research indicates 7 to 8 strong opinions a day over the course of a 2 to 3 hour show. Nobody's going 7-0. In fact, if you are, you're taking safe opinions, which will be punitively punishing you in the ratings. People listen to the guy at the sports bar who's got the strongest opinion. And you and I both are strong opinion people. So I always looked at it when I've not one time at Fox, 8 years, not one time has Fox ever said, that opinion, not once. Not
so that's
mistake,
something people opinion, don't.
Not once.
So that's something the people. That's one of the bigger questions I get. And just to listen, not to give our TV bosses all spend a ton of time giving them credit, but they on this note, I think they deserve a ton of credit. Which is one of the biggest questions I get is like, Fox Sports, Fox News, obviously the Murdoch family has pretty well known, I don't think I'm breaking news here, political feelings and leanings and whatever it is.
Yeah.
How much does that impact what you guys say? And I tell them the honest to God truth. I've hosted my show for over 6 years. There has not been one email. There's not been one phone call.
Yep.
And now that's easy when we're just like, hey, who's going to win the Super Bowl? But the show had just started in the midst of the Kaepernick stuff, Trump calling them sons of bitches. A few years ago, we were deep in it. When the bubble happened and the George Floyd protests, it's not like we are always just talking sports. We are talking about real stuff. And I have never once gotten a note on, oh, no, you can't. What are you going to say on this? You can't say that. And that is, and I do think there is the first time you get one of those, because this happened to me a different spot. There is, and it wasn't even about anything important. It was about what I was going to say about the head coach of the Texans, the dumbest thing imaginable. But they're a partner in this or whatever. Once you get one of those, there is a chilling effect. There is like what am I? And then you can't fully be you. And I'm not even talking about when I say we're all going to step in it, just like have an opinion that is proven wrong or whatever. I'm talking about just doing live. That's you. And so you mentioned Maddow or Mar, that there are some folks that are opinionists, but they have every second mapped out, and their brilliance is making it appear they are delivering it improvisationally when they
like the late Robin Williams doing comedy.
Yes, there you go. But they've actually planned it all out. You and I think, do it similarly, which is we have a skeleton of what we're going to talk about. And then it goes where our brain goes and what is, you know what I mean? And sometimes that leads to screw ups, or that leads to, oh, shoot, I forgot that, whatever. And having people that will back you is, to me, just critically important. Critically.
3 to 4 weeks ago, I was talking. A producer talked to me at the same time I was talking, and I butchered a word. I didn't know it because I couldn't hear me talking because the producer was talking. So it's just, I always think one of the most amazingly difficult jobs is play-by-play of football. So you got 3 hours, and you got Greg Olson up there with Burkhart. They got commercial reads.
Yep.
They've got the crowd. They have a sideline person. They have a director in their ear. Whenever I see criticism in a big game of a play-by-play announcer, a Tirico, a Nance, a Buck, a Burkhart, you have no idea how hard it is to do that game. I've been on those headsets. It makes my job look like a layup, and that's a 360 windmill dunk.
I can't imagine that. By the way, you have Greg. You have a relationship with Greg Olson, right?
Yeah, I've known him for years.
Okay. Please tell him, this doesn't have to be on the air. I think he is, and I have a pretty high standard for color commentators in basketball and football. Basketball, the NBA, vast majority of games I listen to on mute, or I watch on mute. Like, I get actively irritated by the commentary on most of the crews, not all of them. Football's way better, but there aren't a ton of color commentators that I think are truly adding. I think Greg is so sharp. And I thought, like, the other day, I forget even what game it was. It might have been a Thanksgiving game. I don't know. But we had the opportunity, the rare opportunity, the nerd dream of the white whale that is the free kick, which is if you fair catch a punt, you can kick from where you fair caught with no rush off a tee. It's something I've heard about since I was a kid. I've never seen, because you need it. It has to be like a punt at the end of the half that's in field goal range. And the moment it happened, I was like, oh my God, it could be a free. And before I even had the thought out, Greg said it. I think Greg and Burkhart are awesome. I think the A teams, we're lucky as football fans that the biggest games, like the NBC team's great. I love Collinsworth. I love his enthusiasm. Buck and Aikman. It's unbelievable that Buck and Aikman have now been together longer than Madden and Summerall were, which seems impossible in my head, but it's true.
Yeah. I think Tony Romo's had his best year.
The Romo and Nance just had one of the best unscripted calls I can remember. Not like, oh, when they win the game, this is what I'm going to say. But the Deron Bland pick six, he said this is history when he still had three guys to beat. And it wasn't history if he don't score. And Bland picked him up by making those guys miss. Yeah, I mean, our football crews are great. And I think Burkhardt and Olsen are as good as anybody. I think they're excellent. And another guy you have on your show, obviously we both love Stink, who's great, but Sanchez is really sharp. I think Mark is really sharp, and he has the second best hair at Fox. I don't know who has the best, but he's really sharp.
Okay, you wanted to talk about LeBron James.
So
and
go ahead.
Yeah. So I said on my show today, I said the Lakers' loss wasn't the worst loss in the NBA last night. The Clippers faced Denver without Jokic, Murray, and Gordon. They had all four of their stars. And in the fourth quarter, they were doubled at home. It's the worst loss of the year.
No, the Clippers are not going to work. And I legit feel badly for Westbrook. I do. He actually, Colin, was playing well for the Clippers, played well for them at the end of last year, played well for them in the postseason, was playing well this year. It's very, very clear he can still, amazingly, I didn't think he could, be a positive, not a superstar, but a positive under very specific circumstances. And he had it with the Clippers. Then they got Harden. It went exactly back to what he was asked to do as a Laker. And that player is borderline unplayable. So I feel bad for Russ. The Clippers did this to themselves. I don't think they're going to be a playoff team. But the Lakers, here's the LeBron thing I want to talk. You ever look at like the old baseball records? And it's like, oh, who has the most complete games in a season? And it's like, oh, this guy had 38 complete games in 1 year. You look at some of these old records and you're like, oh, like Cy Young had he had 516 wins. It's like, okay, well, so that's no one's probably getting that. Nobody's done the very simple math yet, but LeBron last night passed Kareem for most minutes ever, playoffs and regular season combined. It's over 66,000. His points record and his minutes record are going to be looked at the way we look at the 1920s baseball records. They are going to be so far untouchable. Like this isn't an opinion. So let's talk about the points for a second, okay? And the reason it is because LeBron checked 3 boxes as an 10 out of 10 of, okay, how old were you when you came into the league? Well, he was basically as young as anybody possibly can be. So that's a check mark in his favor. How healthy have you been? Well, he's been as healthy as any player ever. That's a check mark. And how good were you immediately? As good as any rookie's ever been. And then by year 2, one of the 5 best players in the league. So he's at 39,000 points and change. Okay. So let's just call it 40,000 for the simplicity of math. All right. And let's say someone walks into the league and averages 35 points per game from day one of their rookie year. Okay. And let's say they are incredibly healthy and they play 75 games a year without ever missing time. So, okay, how many years would they have to play? If from day one of a rookie, you average 35 a game, if you play 75 games a year, well, 40,000 divided by 35 divided by 75 equals, all you would have to do to pass LeBron James in scoring is average 35 points per game your entire career, never get hurt, play every season and play for it. Let me check. 15 and a half years. It's in-fucking possible. And that's not even as untouchable as the minutes. After last night, he's at 67,000 minutes. Okay, so let's think about that. 67,000 minutes. Let's say your team made the playoffs every year. You played deep into the playoffs every year. So let's say you averaged 90 games a season. 90 games a season. All right. Let's say you did 90 games a season. Let's say you played 40 minutes a night. 90 games a season, 40 minutes a night. How many years would you have to play? only 18 and a half years of 90-game seasons, 40 minutes a night, never getting hurt. So, like, I'm not even right now that interested in the GOAT debate anymore. I just know that, like, some of these records LeBron is setting, and he set one of them last night, they're going to look like some of Wilt's scoring records. Like, oh, no one can even approach that. Like, and so, I mean, I looked at Giannis. Giannis is 40,000 minutes shy of LeBron. Like, well, that's then, if you added Michael Jordan's career to Giannis's career, that would give you slightly more minutes than LeBron. Like, nobody's going to approach these records. Nobody's going to approach them.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. So one of the things that, as I look at this NFL season, you know, a lot of people are talking about, oh, the officiating is the worst ever. No, it's not. That's a complaint every year. The game's getting worse. No, it's not. The ratings are higher than ever. I like Tom Brady, but Brady came out and said the game's getting worse. And I said, and this was my take, and I want you to react to it. I said, the reason you think the game is getting worse, because almost as a general rule, young people need support more than middle-aged or older people. Their brain doesn't develop till they're 24, 25. Their confidence levels, they're more affected by criticism when you're 17, 20, 23 than you are, you know, you get to my age, you don't give a shit.
Sure.
And I said, what's happened, the global wealth has actually hurt quarterback play. And here's my rationale.
Oh, let me
so when we were growing up, when we were growing up, you could be a car dealer. Larry Miller owned the Utah Jazz. A car dealer with a net worth of $100 million. The poorest NFL owners worth like Virginia McCaskey, over $2 billion. And by the way, if she owns the Bears, that's not it, because the Bears would sell tomorrow for probably $7.5 billion.
Or more. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So what has happened is, it used to be you would never fire Frank Reich in year one if your net worth was $300 million. I'm not going to write a $12 million check for Frank Reich. But when I'm worth $32 billion, I'll easily write a $40 million check. So who's the loser in the Frank Reich firing? It's Bryce Young. New coach, new quarterback coach, new staff. By year two. So what has happened increasingly as the owners have gotten wealthier, all these firings are rounding errors. The richer they get, the more secluded they are, the more insulated they are from criticism or punitive action. Right? A bad marketing campaign, if you owned a car dealership 30 years ago, could half your net worth. Jeff Bezos gets no publicity that's positive. It doesn't matter. You know, he's worth $60 billion. And so owners fire quicker. Coaches, knowing it's coming quicker, fire coordinators quicker. Quarterbacks have to win by Thanksgiving of year two, or they get rid of them. Justin Fields in the 70s would get another year. You can't even, that's not even a debate now. You have to move off him. And so the reason quarterback play is perceived as worse, it doesn't make any sense. It's counterintuitive. There's more camps. There's more coaching. Yeah. There's better quarterbacks. What's happening is global wealth has created, from the ownership down, this domino effect of absolute impatience. And the loser isn't the coach, because he gets the money when he gets, Frank Reich gets the money and goes to the beach. Yep. It's not the owner. It's not the GM who gets fired. He gets money and goes to the beach. The loser is the 23-year-old quarterback who's got to play with his Justin Herbert's on his third coordinator and second coach.
And about to be on his third coach. So I have actually, I'm not a very different theory, but in line with what you're talking about, an experiment I always wanted to see. And I've talked with Mangini about this, and we'll never get to see it. But what would the result be if you took a well-known media, not god-awful terrible, but we know he's not a star coach, well-known definition of mediocre head coach. I don't know the example, and I don't want to name a name, it seems mean, but just say whatever the slightly beneath league average while his career was. And an owner said, I am signing this contract that says, you will be my head coach with full control of your own staff for 6 years at a minimum. If at any point between now and 6 years you get fired, I sign the team over to you. I'm telling you, you have absolute job security. Would that create, by inertia and by the fact that you can make every decision be forward, long-term thinking, all of it, instantly by year 3, much less year 6, a top 6, top 8 coaching staff coach in the league, where you're not doing anything impulsively, you're not doing anything that's robbing tomorrow to pay today because you're worried you're going to get canned. And while everyone else is on the treadmill of, oh shit, I got to save my job, you can have the long-term view and install a culture and a system and all of it. I really believe that would be better than what 90% of these teams do.
Yes. And what the benefit of that is that you could hire a better staff. I mean, Carolina, 90% of the good candidates will not even, they'll tell their agent, don't call, right?
Yes. Ben Johnson's not going there. Any of those, no chance. But the flip, and in addition,
you can build a better staff. I guess you can build a better staff with your line of thinking. And over the course of time, the best staff, not just Andy Reid, wins. Spags is a big part of that staff, right? So the better staff.
But wins. Also guys that can, whatever their culture is going to be, like, I don't know for certain. I think it, but I don't know for certain John Harbaugh and Mike Tomlin are in a vacuum. Tomlin's pretty damn impressive. Let me use Harbaugh. But in a vacuum, a great coach. But what both of them had was nearly instant Super Bowl wins, which gave them, at least for the next half decade, 100% job security, which allowed them to install 100% of their system and their culture. And whatever learning on the job they needed to do, they could do with safety and security. And now we look at them as unquestioned great coaches. Like, there is a level of what, if you know you're going to have the gig and you can do things right or wrong the way you want to do it, and not have these teams that just massively go back and forth. The Chargers with Justin Herbert, they have an offensive coach in Anthony Lynn. He's not good enough. They hire Brandon Staley. He's about to get run out of town. They're going to do everything they can to hire Ben Johnson. Like, you know what I mean? Just the back and forth everything. So I think, I do think the lack of patience on NFL coaching staffs is bad for everybody. But my theory on quarterbacks is a different one. And this is where I think Brady got it wrong. I don't think it's that the play's gotten worse. I think that the top level play is now so fucking good that teams are like in the 90s, Kenny Pickett would be the Pittsburgh Steelers starter for 12 to 15 years.
Yes.
I watched Neil O'Donnell play there. You can't tell me that this guy's not as good as him. They went to a Super Bowl.
Okay, listen to this. Aaron Rodgers was in his prime. Matt Stafford close to it. Trubisky made the playoffs twice.
Yes.
In the 70s, he would be Brian Sipe for the Browns. He'd start for a decade.
And so, right. And so what I think is the top level quarterbacks, now that you have some of the best athletes also playing quarterback, whether it be Josh Allen or Lamar or Mahomes, who could have played a bunch of sports, Russell Wilson when he was in his prime, these guys, that teams that have, he's fine, are always looking for the next guy. Yeah. And the guy who it's like, he's fine, if he somehow gets to year 7, is going to be pretty good. But but you don't want to, they don't get there. Like, Goff didn't all of a sudden get better or worse, whatever it is. He's been the same guy. He's super accurate. If he's protected, he's not going to be able to hold on to the ball because he has small hands. And if you get a pass rush on him, it's not going to work out. but he now has seen so much more football, done all these things, that those weaknesses are still there, but the strengths are accentuated. Those things are better. Yeah. But he almost never got another chance. I just think when you are this is where we might have to pause in a moment. I think my Christmas tree is getting delivered, so my dog's going to freak out. But when you have these aliens playing quarterback, if you have a guy who's average, you're going to get rid of him to draft the next guy, and that's a lottery ticket, which then leads to a lot of young, raw quarterbacks, which leads to bad quarterback play.
So there are certain things in sports and business that are just hard and they're imperfect. And there's just no way to generate perfection. And I think in sports, one of those in the NFL is game clock management. So when you get to the end of the game, you've got certain units over the course of a game, players get injured. So, players you would have used in sets earlier now can't play. So as games evolve in the NFL, the later they go, the harder they are to manage. Analytics now wasn't really an issue 10 years ago. Now you have to consider analytics. There's the clock. If you have a young quarterback, they're not as strong at managing the clock. And so you tend to be, I agreed with you on John Harbaugh against the Chargers. Go for it in that situation. I would have gone for it. But it does bring up an interesting, because I think you're too hard on people for game clock management.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of those things that unless you've played football or you've coached, you don't understand. It's like play-by-play. How effing hard it is.
Sure.
Andy Reid was, debased for years in Philadelphia. And then he got Mahomes and nobody talks about it. McVay gets clobbered. Would you acknowledge, and there's probably several analogous options here, that it is one of those things that is probably much harder than people understand?
Yes, I acknowledge that. I think that is correct, which is why it just should be farmed out. And I'm not talking about choosing to go for it on fourth down or not. That I do, listen, I think coaches are far too conservative in large part on that. And I understand our broadcasters very often will be like, well, or the coaches after the game will say, well, yes, we knew the analytics, but given the circumstances of the game, blah, 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 blah. My issue with that is, if that's really what's happening, we know the numbers, but because this guy was out or this or that, we went the other way. How come my entire football life has never happened? Oh, yeah, we knew the numbers said we have to punt here. But given the circumstances of the game, we said, we're fucking going for it. That never happens. And never in my life has it been like, oh, yeah, all the numbers say do the conservative thing, but we're going to be extra aggressive because of circumstances. So to me, coaches are far too conservative. But that has to be the decision of the head coach. I do believe you can't farm that out. You can give him the information. You can talk to him when it's not during the week. That needs to be your general on the battlefield making that call. The timeout stuff, Colin, the clock management stuff, Colin, is blackjack. And there's only one right way to play it. Let me give you a for instance that I honestly believe 29 of 32 NFL head coaches would fail this test. There is a very specific, and it might only come up once a year, if ever, scenario where if you are trailing and you are trying to stop the clock and the other team's trying to run it out, you do not want to call timeout on the north side of the 2-minute warning. When is it and why? And the answer to that question is, and people listening thinking, they're like, well, let me think, blah, blah. It's very, very specific. If there is between about 2:42 and 2:47, exactly that much time left in the half, and you only have one timeout, you 100% should not use it, because the average play is going to take between 2 to 5 seconds. And whether you call your timeout there or not, that the 2 plays later is going to happen on the other side of the 2-minute warning. So if you save it, you can then save 39 seconds on the other side of the 2-minute warning. If you have multiple, and if people are like, that's confusing, get out a piece of paper and write it down and track it out. I promise I'm right. It's a very unique spot, but you got to know it. You've got to know the ways that to give yourself the best option. A thing that super sharp coaches started to do a couple years ago was, oh shit, if the other team, we have 2 timeouts and it is 2nd and 1, we're trying to stop them. We're going to pretend to jump off sides and hope they accept the penalty, because the odds are they're getting this first down on one of the next 2 plays anyway. And we just want it to be untimed. Yes. Like Vrabel did that. Belichick did that. Now coaches have caught on to it. There are certain things that if in the fog of war, the head coach can't handle all of it, then hire some kid that played Madden their whole life and figured it out when they were high and 17 years old, like I did. Listen, I do happen to be brilliant, but this is not part of my brilliance. This is part of me gambling on Madden in a dorm for years and just understanding these little quirks. And so I've joked forever. Before I hired an NFL head coach, I'd be like, we're going to a casino and I'm going to watch you play blackjack for 2 hours. And if you make one mistake, I'm not hiring you. If there's one time where you're like, I know you have a 7 and I have a 16, but I'm going to stay. Okay, you're not going to be my guy. 4th downs are not that black and white. Clock management is. So that stuff I won't give any quarter on. 4th down stuff, I like the Harbaugh thing. Sorry, I'm ranting. You touched on a passionate point for me. I think coaches super overvalue going up 6 points. I actually don't know that in the final 90 seconds, I'd rather be up 6 than 3. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but if you're up 6, the other team has to score a touchdown, is in 4-down territory, 4 down the whole time. You know what I mean? They are going perma aggression. Up 3, they're going to be a little more conservative. They're going to, once they get in field goal range, they're definitely kicking it, all of that. And either way, up 3 or 6, a touchdown beats you. So the Harbaugh thing I thought was insane. I'm like, you're up 3, a first down wins the game. If you need 1 yard, if you kick a field goal, a touchdown beats you either way. Like that one killed me. Like I do think coaches far too often don't just ask themselves the question I would always be asking myself, which is, if I were coaching the other team, what am I rooting for? And if I'm playing Lamar Jackson and I have Justin Herbert, no matter how he's been playing, am I rooting for them to be able to make it to where Justin Herbert never touches the ball again? Or am I rooting for them to put a kicker on the field and guarantee Justin Herbert touches the ball again? Of course, I'm rooting for that, so do the opposite. Harbaugh's usually pretty good about that. I thought he screwed it up Sunday, but it didn't matter. It didn't hurt him.
I actually agreed with you on that. All right, buddy. Good show. Mark Cuban, Jim Harbaugh, LeBron James, Malika Andrews.
Man. And you know what? Hold on. I'm going to say one last thing on that, on the Malika thing. I want to be respectful here because I don't know Malika at all, and she doesn't need me defending her.
Yeah.
But the amount of shit that women in our field take from these creeps on the internet.
Yeah.
And then you add to it the amount of, like, part of the stuff with Malika has a really, really, that I'm not going to get into, like, dark racial connotation about her life and her upbringing that touches close to home for me, that I feel really, really is really cruel. I listen, I don't know if she listens to the volume. Everyone should listen to the volume. But if she doesn't, if someone who is listening to this or seeing this is in her circle, please let her know that those of us, her colleagues, that maybe haven't said anything because you're not trying to draw more attention to these creeps on the internet, have her back. She's a star. And from all accounts, incredibly hard worker. And all these people coming after her for some old nonsense, I think is really, really, really gross. That's it.
Well, social media can be really, really, really gross. I mean, that's
not to me, man. Everybody loves me. It's unbelievable. I can't believe it. Nobody's ever sent a mean tweet about me. Nobody ever makes fun of my hair, my nose, anything. They're just universally approved. Just like you, Colin. Thank you for having me. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, buddy.